Do you know that Igbo women have a form of inheritance? Do you know that women are given some kind of inheritance? Because it's always easy to say that inheritance is just meant for the men and it's only gotten through the patriline. But in our culture, as Igbo people, we have a form or a system of inheritance. It might not really be standardized. It might not really be the normal procedure or how other people, get or share their inheritance. But Igbo people, we have our own way of giving things to our women. So what I want to discuss today is female inheritance in Igbo culture and why ancestral lands are not inherited by Igbo women. While ancestral lands are not inherited by Igbo women. So whenever we make reference to inheritance, it is always synonymous with men and patriline. The first son, Diokbala, the second son would have his own property. The third son will have his own property. In my place, the first son inherits the father's properties, everything. And the first son will now give his brothers, will now share to his brothers. Now sometimes this first son, especially if this first son is not really a good person, this first son would end up taking his whole brother's property and will just be giving them, tiny pieces of lands, which eventually causes some kind of problem. I've witnessed some. So when we now mention inheritance, it's as if women are removed totally. Women are removed totally from such discussions. But there is a reason. This reason, it is not focused on female subjugation. It is not focused on female neglect. But there is a reason why it's actually happened. There is a reason why women don't inherit ancestral lands. Now, before we go further, we need to first of all understand what inheritance of ancestral land by male relatives actually means. Now, we need to know that the Igbo society is focused or is deeply rooted in natural spirits, natural lineage spirits. Whatever we do is focused. It revolves around the family. We have Ndi-Ichie. It's talking about the whole ancestral origin of that particular family. Ndi-Ichie, we're making reference to the men and the women that established a particular lineage. So when we're talking about inheritance of this land by male relatives, we are simply talking about the continuation of ancestral lineage, the continuation of those ancestral lands and ancestral forces. Everything that we have within that lineage is inherited and preserved by that particular male relative. That's why male children is really, really a big thing, because women can marry into another family and there will have to be a break in that ancestral lineage that we have. And this same principle applies to all the ancestral forces. For instance, each family would have an ofo, a staff of authority that is targeted or holds the community, the lineage or the family together. That offer cannot be handed over to the woman. It has to be maintained by the male representative of that family. So the same thing is what is actually happening here. Ancestral lands that have been inherited by male relative is focused on the preservation and the continuation of that lineage and their entire ancestral forces. Now, such lands are dedicated to the entire ancestral forces that once lived, preserved, and fought for the acquisition of such land. Now, we understand that some of the lands that the men are inheriting, they grew up, and at a certain age, with the absence of their father, they were given that land. But they were people that actually fought, that died for that particular land. So there are ancestral forces, and most times we don't really know the entire story of how that land even came into that family. we'll say it, Imaro ife anahu jiwebia. Imaro ife anahu bu jiwebiri. So it would be a careless thing or a callous thing for you to disregard the history of that land by allowing a woman that would marry into another family to take that inheritance. Now, I'm going to also come and explain it so that it will not be as if I'm saying, oh, women are not capable. Don't misquote me. Women are capable. But this is the ancestral perception on which the foundation of male inheritance of ancestral land were basically based. Now, this inheritance of ancestral land by male relative, it is not for you to sell them. It is not for you to sell them because of the history, because of its origin. Aniobi mother. In Igbo culture, in Igbo society, we don't sell Aniobi. For that land to even be sold for whatever reason, which has to be a very good one, they would have to perform the rites of Igbu Ewu Ani. It's a traditional rite that is carried out in cases where any land is being sold. The rationale there is actually to inform the ancestral forces, Ndi-Ichie, that owns that land, and inform them that this land has changed its ownership. And when that rite in traditional cultural practices has been performed, the new occupants can now move into that land with their own ancestral ezumezu, with their own ancestral forces. That's the rationale. And because of this reality, it makes it impossible for a woman to inherit this land, especially if this woman is of a marriageable age. You see the reason? Especially if this woman is of a marriageable age, and once she marries, she's going to move into the family house, the family land of her husband's people. So by that reality, it's already has disqualified her from inheriting ancestral lands. Now, she inheriting such land means that she would pass her ancestral heritage to another family that isn't ours. Now, imagine if every woman is inheriting ancestral lands. It means that the original families of those women will no longer exist, especially if she's the only child of that man. The man's name would literally be closed off. And this is one thing Igbo people fear. Amaichi, a person's lineage to close. We fear it more than anything possible. So, because of that reality, if she marries and she takes those ancestral lands or all those ancestral izumezu or for, she is closing her own father's or family's line. So, for a woman to inherit such a land, there has to be an absence of a son, or a son who is traditionally capable of carrying on the name and the mantle that is associated with it. Cases where there is an absence of a son that is going to carry on that particular lineage, what our ancestors are going to do is something they call ehachi. Ehachi Wani. The daughter stays back and she procreates in her father's house to give birth to a son that is going to carry on her father's name. So we'll now look at the intentions behind the institution of these Igbo cultures. I would say that it has nothing to do with subjugation of women in any way, shape, or form. Now, another system of inheritance that we don't know is iduna ono. Iduna ono. Iduna wani ono. Iduna ono. That is a system of inheritance for Igbo women. Now, this is a form of gifting women with items. Sometimes it can even contain land and other ornaments, things that she's going to use to cook, things that she's going to clothe, and all those things, a jigida, all those beautiful items the families are going to give it to them. Giving the woman land, it depends on the strength of her family. It all depends. Now, modern days time, we've seen families that even give houses to the couple. We see people give land, we see people give cars. So it depends on the financial strength of the family. But Idunono is a system of female inheritance that has somehow, not that it has lost its relevance, but we don't know that it is a system of inheritance for Igbo women. So these gift items, I've said it before, it depends on the financial strength of the family, and it is targeted as her using those items to establish herself in her husband's house. And these gifts are given to her during her traditional marriage. Now let us also not forget that women kind of also have their own kind of inheritance from their husbands. Their husbands are going to give them maybe a piece of land for her to basically farm there and use the proceeds to feed and take care of herself. Now these are traditional ways that our ancestors used to show that they did not abandon their female children. They had a way of always creating another system that caters for the interest of women. Now, secondly, if a woman isn't married, her brothers are expected to give her a parcel of land, which she will use to cultivate and take care of herself. These are facts. If a woman does not marry, it does not mean that the brothers are going to just totally neglect her, no matter how small they inherited from their parents. They are supposed to cut out little pieces and give to her. She's their blood. They are supposed to take care of her. So in this way, it also becomes a system of inheritance for this woman that didn't marry. We are supposed to take care of each other. And that's what this practice is trying to tell us. Now because we are not aware of these practices in Ndi-Igbo, we are now being made to believe that the system or method of inheritance, that because the system of inheritance, Idunono, is not pronounced, we are now made to believe that our ancestors never made provisions that took care of women. But in reality, it is actually the opposite. Now, no society is perfect. No civilization is perfect. And we shouldn't even expect perfection from them. But as we grow, as human beings grow, we are getting new informations every single day. And getting those informations means that we develop ourselves based on these existing principles, based on these existing foundations. So we shouldn't neglect, demonize, or insult our traditional system because we feel that they are uncivilized. And they did not match up with the Eurocentric interpretations that we have as civilization. Rather, we should acknowledge where our ancestors were, their mindset, how they saw things, acknowledge them, give them an accolade for the ones that they did right, and focus on developing those practices and doing more. So this is the information that I want to share. Female inheritance, the system of female inheritance for Igbo women is Iduna Ono. And finally, the reasons why women don't inherit ancestral lands is because we have the opportunity to marry into another family. And we should also know that no matter what, we have to preserve our lineage. We cannot preserve other people's lineage and allow our own lineage to die off. So this is the rationale behind the institution of this particular cultural practices. Yeah, guys, yeah. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and join me in my other social medias for further conversations. And until next time, yeah, guys, yeah.